you ever had one of those guy-girl arguments where the guy keeps saying, you know, it's obvious I'm right. These are the facts. And the girl keeps saying, it doesn't matter if you're right. It's the way you say it. You're not saying it right. I don't like the way you're saying it, right? It drives guys crazy, I know. But it's almost like the country is in the middle of that argument. And I'm not saying this is all about guys and girls. I'm just saying it's that kind of argument, because here we have Donald Trump, who is, look, the country is doing great economically. There's virtually no unemployment. Black and white unemployment is as low as it's been in years. The black-white employment participation gap has narrowed to its smallest level in 40 years. And Trump is losing these elections. I mean, some of these special elections that they're holding, the Republicans are winning, but the gap that was there, that Trump won by, is disappearing. The one in Pennsylvania, they still haven't worked this out yet. I mean, Conor Lamb is claiming victory, and he does seem to have a few more votes than the Republican. But this was a place that Trump won by 20 points. So here is the guy. This is MSNBC, and so you'll say, oh, it's the left wing. But this is basically the common wisdom that's going around about these elections. This is from Steve Kornacki at MSNBC.
Yeah, this is not an isolated event that we just saw here in Pennsylvania 18. Look at it this way. From the start of Donald Trump's presidency, go back to April 2017. That's when we had our first congressional special election of the Trump era. You were then in a district in Kansas that Trump had won by 27 points. In that special election, the Republican won, but the margin fell down to 7 points. This is a pattern we've seen a few times since. Went out to Montana a couple months later. Trump had won the state by 21. The at-large congressional district also falls down to 7. Again, you're seeing a double-digit swing. How about South Carolina, the 5th district? Trump had won it by 19, went all the way down to 3 in a special election. You did have Georgia 6 in here. That's one where Trump won narrowly, Republicans won narrowly. That one's in there as well. But then, you know, look, you had Alabama. Trump won the state of Alabama by 28 points. Doug Jones ends up eking that thing out on election night. And here we go. This was Trump by 20, and this is, you know, basically Democrat by, you know, 0.3. But you're getting double-digit swings now, in 5 of these congressional senatorial special elections, double-digit swings. That really looks like a trend.
It does look like a trend. Now, look, I don't read tea leaves, and I don't know. The elections can change right away. I suspect there's going to be some big event in North Korea that could change everything, but I won't predict that because who knows what's going to happen. Just want to make one thing clear. I am not talking about morality. I'm not talking about right and wrong. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about strategy, right? Because I know that a lot of people love the Donald. They love President the Donald, you know, and like every time I say, well, maybe he shouldn't have done that, I hear from him. You know, I hear like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't say anything wrong. Donald is fighting our fight for us. And, you know, he's got the little people, he's got our backs. Totally talking about strategy. I mean, let's talk about yesterday, the Tillerson firing, right? Apparently, you know, the chief of staff called Tillerson. Tillerson was suffering from some disease in Africa and said, listen, Trump was going to fire you on Twitter on Friday, but I held him off, but you better come home because things are not looking good. Tillerson comes back. This is according to the Washington Post. And he gets fired by tweet. And 3 hours later, Trump calls him up. So Tillerson gave his talk yesterday. He responded to being fired. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, you know, his mother. Thanks, the director of the movie. Thanks, like, it gives the whole Oscar speech. Doesn't mention the president of the United States. Doesn't mention him once. So clearly, these two guys do not get along. Now, Trump was right to fire this guy, right? They were not getting along. They didn't agree on major things. They didn't agree on getting out of the Paris Accord. I'm much more on Trump's side, by the way. I don't think Tillerson was doing that good a job. He spent a lot of his political capital reorganizing the State Department, which maybe it needs, but that's kind of a waste of time. Tillerson is a man you respect. He's a man this is the guy who headed up Exxon, very successful, a man of dignity, head of, he was an Eagle Scout. He believes in the Boy Scouts, support the Boy Scouts. He is kind of a Boy Scout. He's a straight arrow guy. You don't treat the guy like crap. And this is the thing that it really does bother me when Trump supporters say this. Trump goes after Jeff Sessions. You don't treat Jeff Sessions like that. You can dislike him. You can argue with him. You can fire him. You can do anything like that. But you treat him with respect. The guy has earned earned that respect. He is acting as he sees fit. And a lot of people may say, well, he's doing the wrong thing. He should never accused himself on Russia. But you don't go after him on Twitter. That's not the way people treat each other. That is not the way people respect each other. Again, I don't like it. I can tell you personally, I think it's awful when people treat each other that way. But just talking about respect, I'm just talking about strategy, women especially, they go nuts when they see Donald Trump. And when he behaves this way, it just makes them crazy. And when he's losing 20 points and doing so well, the economy is doing so incredibly well. Where's ISIS? Gone. Where's the war? Gone. You know, North Korea wants to talk to us. Everything is going great. Everything Trump is doing is going really, really well. And people hate him. And that's bad strategy. You know, it really is funny because you talk about Tillerson and the disagreements they had, but there's also the fact that some of the things that Tillerson supported, Trump wound up doing. Like take North Korea. Tillerson has been saying we should be negotiating with North Korea, and now Trump is going over to negotiate with North Korea. And Trump yesterday, he took total, so that was my decision. But Tillerson has been pushing for that. So when Tillerson made his speech, he made sure to point out, I mean, this is part of the obvious tension between these two guys. Tillerson made sure to point out that he'd been partly responsible for that. This is cut number 5.
First, working with allies, we exceeded the expectations of almost everyone with the DPRK maximum pressure campaign. With the announcement on my very first trip as Secretary of State to the region that the era of strategic patience was over, and we commenced the steps to dramatically increase not just the scope, but the effectiveness of the sanctions.
So the big one that they did disagree on is Tillerson apparently supported the Iran deal. I cannot understand. You know, the New York Times hammers this thing with the Iran deal, that Trump is abandoning this wonderful Iran deal. I do not see how anybody supports this thing. And Trump is absolutely right about this. Trump gave a speech on the Iran deal. Classic Trump. This is cut number 1. Just this is where he stands. So you can see if you disagreed with him on this, you were going to get fired.
We're also working with allies and partners to block Iran's path to a nuclear weapon and confront its sponsorship of terror and bloodshed all around the world. Everywhere we go in the Middle East, it's Iran, Iran, Iran. Behind every problem is Iran. Well, we're dealing with it in a very serious fashion. One of the worst deals I've ever seen was the Iran deal. $150 billion we gave them. For what?
For what? And you know, it's absolutely true. All this did was delay Iran's nuclear weapons. And if it delayed them, it may just have delayed them in terms of what we see, that people keep saying, yeah, they're following the deal, but they're obviously not following the spirit of the deal, and they're terrorists. But, you know, who knows what they're doing? It was a ridiculous deal. And Obama spent so much of his capital on this thing that, you know, he lied, he held up drug investigations. It's awful, and I don't know what Tillerson was thinking, but obviously when you have these two guys, some of the things they did were hilarious, like Tillerson calling Trump a moron, which I'm sure actually happened because they asked him about it, and he kept saying, well, I don't want to talk about this silly stuff, you know. And then the other story, there's actually an entire article in the Wall Street Journal about this, that they're sitting in China at a diplomatic dinner in China, and they serve a salad, and Tillerson doesn't want the salad, and Trump's afraid that they're going to be insulted, and he says, eat the salad, Rex. Something apparently, you know, and again, you know, here is the thing about Trump. Somebody said yesterday, one of the hysterics on the mainstream media said that Trump is a sociopath. He doesn't understand other people's feelings. That's not true. I mean, that's absurd. What he does not seem to understand is that other people have dignity. He's not the only person who has dignity. He's not the only person who has a sense of himself. You know, when people insult him, he says, that's rude. And then he calls people names, you know. And I think, like I said, you don't treat a guy like this like that. It's just not what you do. And it doesn't come across well if you're just talking pure strategy. So, you know, again, I know people hate it when I pick on Trump's manners. And I heard yesterday all kinds of conservative commentators trying to excuse him for the way he fired Tillerson. And I'm not trying to make a tremendous big thing about it, but you could see that Tillerson was really, really ticked off. And you know, Take a look at this guy, Connor Lamb, all right? Now, Connor Lamb, they say he ran as a Republican, but that's not true. He ran as a fake Republican. He was an actual Marine, and he did that thing that Democrats always do where they overplay the military thing, like, yes, I accept this mission to run for Congress. He goes, yeah, we get it. You were a Marine. Thanks for your service. But like, what do you believe, you know? And then he would say things like, well, I'm personally opposed to abortion, which is like great, you know, like as they're ripping the baby to shreds and selling its parts. Like, thanks, I'm glad you personally oppose it, but he wasn't politically opposed to it. He did say that he was against more gun restrictions, but you just know all these blue dog Democrats are the same. Once they get in, they vote. They're just congressmen, right? They vote the way the whip tells them to vote. So they're going to vote with Nancy Pelosi on every single important thing. That's why Trump was calling him Lamb the Sham, because he was just in make-believe Republican. But listen to the way he speaks. And this is he's claiming victory. The victory is still up in the air because it's so close. But listen to the way he speaks and compare it to Donald Trump.
People are so tired of the shouting on TV and in our politics. It's amazing what happens when you're in a room with real people who have real aspirations and real troubles. There's lots of ideas. There's no angry shouting. Our job in Congress is to attack the problems, not each other. People want to be heard. They want to talk about serious things and honest solutions, not be drowned out by dark money, distorting the truth, and telling lies to our children. I'm proud that you helped me refuse corporate PAC money.
You know, it's funny, that dark money thing is always a big issue. And I remember somebody yelling at me right after the election, Trump won because of dark money. I mean, Trump spent so much less than Hillary Clinton did. And the whole dark money issue is really, I feel, an attempt to silence political speech, because it sounds great when you say there should be transparency. But really what that means is if you donate to something and people don't like it, they can boycott your business, which is a terrible thing for you. You should be able to donate where you want without being exposed all the time. So the guy is like, look, this district was redistricted out of existence by a judge. I don't know if that's going to hold up, but as of right now, if that holds up, this guy is going to vanish like the district vanishes. He'll go back to wherever fake Republicans go, you know, and he won't be there anymore. So this is not a heavyweight result that we all have to worry about in terms of votes. But I do think there's something to be said for the fact that people are put off by Donald Trump in spite of his incredible successes. And they are really incredible. You know, one of the false narratives that's being touted around is that it was really funny because Tillerson worked in Russia for Exxon and Putin gave him some kind of friendship medal and all this. When he was appointed, everybody said, proof at last that Trump is in collusion with Russia. He's appointing a Secretary of State who is in the Russian pocket. He is Putin's puppet, this guy. So then, you know, there's this spy thing going on in Britain where this ex-spy was poisoned, obviously by the Russians. Theresa May is going out after it. And Tillerson came out and said, yes, it's the Russians. Yesterday, I mean, Trump also came out and said it did sound like the Russians. And Trump was actually being kind of reasonable. Everybody wants him to jump down Putin's throat, including me, for this, because Putin is a murderer, which is a good reason to jump down his throat. But Trump is waiting to talk to Theresa May in England. So this is cut 7.
I'm speaking to Theresa May today. It sounds to me like it would be Russia based on all of the evidence they have. I don't know if they've come to a conclusion, but she's calling me today. As you know, now we're going to the wall. We're going out to the wall. We're going to be looking at the prototypes, which is very important for our country. But Theresa May is going to be speaking to me today. It sounds to me like they believe it was Russia, and I would certainly take that finding as fact.
Mr. President, do you believe there could be a response from the United States? Do you believe there could be a response from the United States?
Yeah, as soon as we get the facts straight, and we're going to be speaking with the British today, we're speaking with Theresa May today, and as soon as we get the facts straight, if we agree with them, we will condemn Russia or whoever it may be. But I have not spoken to her. I'll speak to her sometime today.
Now, I want to wrap this up so we can get to the mailbag, because we have great questions in the mailbag today. But I just want to finish by Rex Tillerson comes out and he made this statement about Russia, which was much more hard-boiled, much more direct. I think Trump is right. He's got to talk to Theresa May before he comes out and says anything exactly. Putin is hitting back against May and saying he's going to pull out all of British media out of Russia and all this. But Putin is very good at what he does, which is being a murderous tyrant. He's really good at it. He's really good at disassembling whatever hopes the Russians had of freedom after the fall of the Soviet Union. He has been expert at it. Barack Obama fell for it. George W. Bush fell for it. They've all, remember Hillary Clinton with her reset button. They all fell for what this guy is doing because they didn't want to start trouble. They were so happy the Cold War was over. They were so happy the Cold War was over, they didn't want to start it up again. But Tillerson has a very, that was one of the things. The one guy I know who has worked for Tillerson, when he was appointed, I said to him, is he a Russian plant? He said he knows exactly who these guys are. And you could hear it in cut number 6.
Much work remains to respond to the troubling behavior and actions on the part of the Russian government. Russia must assess carefully as to how its actions are in the best interest of the Russian people and of the world more broadly. Continuing on their current trajectory is likely to lead to greater isolation on their part, a situation which is not in anyone's interest.
So the funny thing is, of course, the same exact people who were saying he appointed Trump because he's in Russia's pocket are now saying he fired Trump because he appointed Tillerson because he's in Russia's pocket, are now saying he fired Tillerson because he's in Russia's pocket because Tillerson was too tough on the Russians, so now he's firing him. So Putin is just like running everything, except you don't know, he's doing opposite things. The one thing, I just want to end with this, the one thing about Trump that we really have to think about for a minute is when you think of a bad guy being a politician, a nasty guy being a politician, you think of him being a nasty politician. In other words, you think of Stalin, you think of Hitler, you think of people who violate the norms of governance, who violate people's freedoms, who violate people's rights. Trump hasn't been like that at all. The press keeps calling him authoritarian. He has actually weakened the executive branch. He's weakened the government. He has been less authoritarian than certainly than Barack Obama was, who with his pen and his phone, I have a pen and a phone, I don't need the lawmakers. I mean, that's authoritarian. Trump has not been like that at all. But it is possible that he's just a rude, brusque, obstreperous guy who's not violating American norms, right? And all I'm saying about that is, okay, so what? So it lowers the conversation, so it makes the government a little bit chaotic, so it offends the dignity of good men who are serving the country like Tillerson and like Jeff Sessions. But also, we do have to think about this as strategy. We want to keep winning. We want to keep the Congress. We want to, for the midterms, if that's possible, we want to keep the Congress. We want Trump to get reelected. I want Mike Pence to be president in the election after that. You have to wonder about whether Trump understands. Look, Trump is obviously some kind of brilliant, instinctive strategist. You have to wonder if he understands how this comes across to certain people in the country.